Hello everyone, hope you're doing great. Today we're going to be talking about some of the issues with WorkSafe BC. Stay with us. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the beginning of the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Thompson, and we love to start each of these shows reading from my wonderful father's Bible. This Bible is older than me, I'm quite convinced, and I have pictures of the family sort of gathered around my dad holding this Bible when I was a little kid. And I opened it up to Proverbs 31 today, and it says, "Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Open your mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy." I just think that, maybe that's a pretty incredible verse for today. It's something that the Bible asks us to do. I mean, when it says to open your mouth for the dumb, it doesn't mean people that are dumb, how we might use it today, but for people that can't speak, for people who don't feel like their voice is being heard. And so today we have a very interesting story, and I'm going to get right to it. We have Jaskarn Gill with us, and we've had him on the show before. We've had ongoing and continued issues with WCB that we've heard from any number of people in this province. It does seem that when people feel that they should be getting some justice regarding something that has happened, that sometimes we don't see that justice taking place. And so Jazz has a story, and I want to welcome him to the show. And Jazz, we know that I guess there's some, you've been involved in a battle since 2013, and there's been some very grave unhappiness on your part for getting any kind of hearing, for getting justice, for getting help for a situation. So I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you, Jazz, to just explain from the beginning what happened. Do it as easily as you can. Don't get too detailed so that, we just get the story, the basics, because I know this is quite detailed, but so that we all understand and so we can maybe hone in on something that could be not only affecting yourself, but many people in British Columbia. So start from the beginning, Jazz.
Okay, first of all, Laura, thank you very much for having me on the show. Really appreciate your introduction. And my full name is Jaskarn Singh Gill, President and CEO of BC Human Rights Organization. Our mandate is to promote, protect, and enforce human rights in British Columbia in accordance with the Canadian Human Rights Act, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We did this in 2016 to specifically address a void that was left by the 2002 government when they got rid of the BC Human Rights Commission. That's a whole different can of worms we'll save for a different time, but it's interconnected, as you know, with all the emails I'm sending you. It's a multi-governmental and law enforcement problem, but we're going to focus on this one discrepancy which I identified in around 2015. In order to make a decision on any injured worker's case, WorkSafe BC case managers have to use law from the Workers' Compensation Act and policy from the Rehabilitation Services and Claims Manual, but for some reason, policy 9620 was missing. Now, when I brought this to the attention of government officials and journalists at CBC, I've got an audio recording with my conversation with CBC, and if you can see along the top, it says, "For all decisions, including appellate decisions made on or after July 2nd, 2004, please refer to policy item number 9620, board officers, in volume 2 of the Rehabilitation Services and Claims Manual." This is from volume 1, but when you go to volume 2, this policy is nowhere to be found. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see basically it explains what the purpose of this policy was and the responsibility of board officers to basically adjudicate those claims. So if you go further down, it explains what term compensation means. It means medical care, prescriptions, wage loss benefits, and all that stuff. And then they're supposed to make a determination that do they refer this injury claim to the Disability Awards Department for further review because they probably equipped with maybe more access to doctors or whatever. But to make that referral, if you scroll down, you'll see 3 points here. If you just scroll down here, 1, 2, and 3. So the first one is if there's a medical report that indicates that a permanent disability exists or there is a possibility of a permanent disability existing. So that's something that in my case, I had an MRI that confirmed that I had herniation at the L4 or 5 level, but WorkSafe BC case managers failed to update their computer or their file, and they kept treating my injury as a lumbar muscle strain/sprain injury, even though it was a disc herniation. Now, that one little negligent detail ended up giving me the wrong treatment, which further deteriorated my condition to the point where I had nerve pressure on the nerves, and then I had to undergo lumbar back surgery. But now, the second line says if the worker indicates that the injury is more serious or whatever it is, they're still supposed to consider it. But now if you go to page 2 of this policy, if you scroll further down, this is the concerning part because it says right here, board officers are, however, expected to exercise discretion and common sense when deciding to do that referral. So nobody's asking these board officers to be doctors or medical professionals. They're asking them just to use common sense that if there's even a slight possibility of permanent disability, they were supposed to refer it to the Disability Award Department. But because this policy was missing, injured workers had no fair chance at adjudicating their claims in their favor because that policy would have supported their case. And now, when I brought this to the attention of our government officials, we got a lot of clawback from Harry Baines and these guys, which I didn't understand why.
And who is Harry Baines?
So Harry Baines is now he's been the Minister of Labor of British Columbia since 2017. We've got a video recording of our meeting with him on November 17th, 2017, asking him for public inquiry. All injured workers told the stories about the human rights abuses they were subjected to. And I was in there as well. And that's the video when we actually specifically asked him for a public inquiry into WorkSafe BC. Now,
is this the Harry Baines you're talking about right here?
This is him, yes.
All right.
Now, if you look into that last email I sent, if you go further down in there, you'll see the Hansards. Harry Baines clearly asked for a public inquiry in 2007, right? Now, for him to call for a public inquiry in 2007 and not order the public inquiry when he becomes the Minister of Labor, I think there's something he's got to hide there.
Okay.
And part of it is
so let me just try to find the Hansard. Yeah, the Hansard. Is it here? Would you say this is right here?
No, this is actually the email correspondence that we sent him on April 6, 2016. If you scroll down to page 5 out of 6 on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, you go to page 5 of 6. It'll start with the date that we sent the email.
Okay.
Keep going down. Yeah,
right here.
Right there. April 6, 2016. This was the PDF email that I sent to him. I copied it to him.
Okay.
He was an MLA at that time, right?
Okay.
So understand that I was his constituent at that time. And as an MLA, he only had one course of action, which would be to inform the critic of labor, who should have publicly questioned the Minister of Labor in question period. Why is this policy missing from the current manual? How many victims are affected by this case, by this discrepancy? What are we doing? And all these things to find out how many people have been impacted. Now, we have identified over 50 injured workers over the years now. The numbers, if you ask anybody in the opiate crisis, serious question that they give an answer to is how many of those victims were introduced to opiate prescriptions for workplace injuries that were never taken care of. But if you
Wow,
look at number
opiate.
two, yeah, well, I mean, prior to my injury, I did not take any opiates or any prescriptions. Now I'm forced to take so many just because I'm living with nerve pain. And now I'm still waiting for another back surgery for the same injury I sustained at work on April 10th, 2012. And they haven't given me any medical treatment, nothing. I've only been able to survive because my family was able to take me on, right? And trust me, it 12 years of being, financially relying on everybody else and my wife to be working in order for me to basically fight this case.
Right.
They understood the importance of it to the public. They've met so many of the injured workers. But, I thought that our country was a lot more organized and a lot more civil than it is today. But I mean, we're learning a lot about our country, right?
Yes. So let's go over this because I know this is a lot of information for me. And I know that
Yes.
I want everyone to understand, because someone from WorkSafe BC is going to understand this easily. Just explain to us.
Yeah.
You're saying that policy 96.2 is missing from the WorkSafe BC Rehabilitation Services and Claims Manual Volume 2. So it was
Yes.
in Volume 1, but somehow
Yes.
when they did their next Volume 2, they didn't put it in there.
It went missing.
And what specifically does 96.2 say that's important to you?
It's not 96.2, it's 96.20. We can't drop that
point
zero
20.
because there's a set, 0.20, because under the Workers' Compensation Act, there is a policy 90 or something that's 96.2. That's totally different than policy 9620. But yeah,
Okay.
so this one basically, in a nutshell, this policy gave it basically told the case managers that are making decisions on these cases to use common sense, that if there's even any possibility of a permanent disability, such as in my case, I had a disc herniation. I'm not a doctor or a specialist, but I know for sure a disc herniation, a spine injury, is a serious enough condition. And now I can speak from as a witness and as a victim. Yeah, permanent damage. It doesn't get better. I got surgery on May 9th, 2014. I still can't feel my legs. And I know that if I wanted to be more out and about and spending time with my family, I would have to spend that time on a wheelchair. And that would be detrimental for my mental health, right? I'm 48. I'm not interested in that part.
Okay. And why do you think? Absolutely. So this is terrible. First of all, I'm so sorry for your pain. I can't imagine if that happened to myself or to my husband or a member of our family, what we would feel like. So I am so sorry for that. Why do you think they have not put in policy 96.20 into the Rehabilitation Services Manual Volume 2?
Well, this is because it goes down to 2015. When I started meeting with WorkSafe BC's executives, I told them this was happening and this was affecting numerous cases. Instead of actually doing something about it, they tried to bully and harass me to basically go silent. And then they tried to get a lawyer they offered me compensation in order to basically go silent, and I wasn't interested. And I guess the choice of words that I had for them were very offensive, and that's what I'm kind of, well, I mean, you have principles. And one of those principles that my parents taught me was you don't betray people. You stop and you help anybody based on any reason. You stop and you help them. Anytime you see somebody in need, them. And that's what I did. I know I took the difficult road, but it was the right path to take, because like I
Okay.
said, they wanted me to stay silent, but I had 18 other injured workers, and when that guy told me that, well, I'm not talking about any of those people, well, then I wasn't interested in any offer for compensation, because I think that there's more than enough money for them to pay out my claim and every single one of those claims on those victims that have been suffering. And they just didn't want to admit to this. That's why they're not putting this policy in, because there's also people that have actually committed suicide. And that missing policy applied in some of their cases because all of them had serious back injuries. Now, when I started doing my human rights advocacy, I started speaking at local Sikh temple, and I went to one of the churches in Surrey here. And people, when they give up hope, they go pray to get better. And that was the thought process. I also thought that maybe that's what they're doing, and I'll find some people there. Yeah, sure. I met injured workers from all nationalities, all ethnic backgrounds, religious backgrounds. They do not discriminate upon any of these working class people. Majority of them are just simple working class people. That's all we are. But when I saw this problem, see, I was particular about this discrepancy because of my work in aviation. I used to paint helicopters for the Department of National Defense, and also we had an international operation. So my work standards were very, very strict. And I also understood that if I sign off on any aircraft or maintenance work, I'm also accepting that if any of my work comes back to do any kind of damage to the person, I'd be held responsible for criminal negligence causing bodily harm or death. Now, on that same standard, I was expecting people who are making decisions on our health at WorkSafe BC, I was expecting them to, at least practice due diligence. But now what we found in my case, and I know we found it in other cases as well, but in my case, I was saying prior to this report getting into my hands, I was just an injured worker who was basically claiming that WorkSafe BC defrauded me. But now I have a pretty good idea that I have a good interpretation of the Criminal Code of Canada or any legal statute. I mean, it's a matter of interpretation, learning how to read these things, right? A retired RCMP officer has now confirmed WorkSafe BC case managers and their board officers committed fraud, negligence, and breach of trust in the mishandling of my back injury claim. Now, that should be a clear-cut civil claim, right? Back another old grave that these people tried to bury, the miscarriage of justice at the Supreme Court of British Columbia on January 3rd, 2017, when Supreme Court Judge Robert W. Jenkins dismissed my civil claim against WorkSafe BC without even reading the medical legal report. Now, I took that case and registered it under charter rights violations and fraud and negligence. So now that a retired RCMP officer has confirmed this brings that case back up. And how come they dismissed my case without even reading the medical evidence?
And has anything been brought for justice in that case at all?
Absolutely nothing. It's just cover up after cover up, and the cover up actually leads straight to the Attorney General's office. Premier Eby knows about my case personally. Attorney General Nikki Sharma has personally known about my case since February 3rd, 2023. I have an audio recording of my interaction. Now, I've basically I fell to the lowest parts of this world that if you can, as a living man, okay? As a man, I never questioned the responsibilities that I have as a father, as a husband, as a brother, as a son. I've always just taken them as those were my responsibilities, and I always took care of them. But I have so many things that now, I mean, naturally, the breadwinner of the house has always been the wife. And I didn't get to be, maybe it was a lesson that God needed to teach me as well, because it's okay for the female to be the breadwinner. It's nothing wrong with it. What it is it's human nature to want to be able to do things for your family, you know, without having an income, disability income, and not even being able to work for this many years. I can't even explain how difficult this has been.
Right. And I do
But
see here
these,
on this document, you were just talking about, you apologize for the level of urgency you demanded, but at least one
yep,
victim of these human rights abuses was forced down a path where he eventually committed suicide. And the reason that
yep,
this is so difficult is because this is affecting real lives, not just yours, but other
yep.
people. And that's why you want justice for everyone. If I
That's
could
what it
ask,
is.
right, and apparently, so this Mr. Kang, he was denied proper medical treatment. WorkSafe BC was mandated to provide an injured worker. Within 1 week of his death, WorkSafe BC blamed miscommunication for their excuse and
Yep.
mishandling of his claim. Okay, so
Which
yeah,
which suggests negligence right there too.
yes, it does on the part of
I mean,
WorkSafe,
right?
yeah, for saying,
Yes.
miscommunication. I mean, someone's dead. Someone's dead. The
Yeah.
other thing
At
I
the end
want
of the
to,
day, yes.
right. So one thing I want to know is when you bring up that this policy 96.20 is missing from the second volume, what is
Yeah.
their answer?
Well, remember Honorable Daryl Pleckus, the former Speaker of the
Sure.
Legislature?
Yes.
So we met with him in October 5th, 2017, at the BC Legislature. I'll send you a picture of that. But we in 2018, around January, February, we met with him about, I would say, 5 or 6 times. We provided him with USBs of audio recordings of our meetings at that time that we had already caught, in the law courts, in Harry Bain's office, in Suk Dhaliwal's office, in many other offices. But he thought that this was going to be a very, very simple fix, because as members of the public, we only have so much access to information, even with freedom of information requests. He got his one of his investigators, I forget his name now, but he got one of his investigators to look into this. He told us, give me 30 days and I'm going to get to the bottom of this discrepancy, because this is Canada. It's obviously in volume one. And if it's not in volume two, it should tell us where. There should be a record of who took it out, when they took it out, and why they removed it, right? But they have yet to find. He came out and met with us almost 30 days later, and we were shocked. Dr. Pleckus actually told us that every single allegation you guys have made, including the allegation that of what's happening in our unions, are 100% true. And there's an army of lawyers that are basically fighting access to that information. That's when we kind of knew that we're in a lot of trouble, because in order to get a fix in this, we're going to need a lawyer. Well, how are you going to get a lawyer when there's a whole army of these lawyers under the BC Bar Association basically hell-bent to make sure you have zero access to justice? Now, what these people have to understand is, I mean, I might have been a blue-collar worker or a mechanic or whatever they want to call me, but I mean, I know my rights, and I know I understand law a little bit. So as a human being, I think that we should be treating people a lot better than that. I mean, you get injured, you know how easily this opiate crisis could be finished and done with? But there's actually, believe it or not, there's a group of government officials who are living off that blood money.
And these are
Jennifer,
paid, this is paid for by our tax dollars. So
yes,
do you know
yes.
what I mean?
So the
The other
public should be
side,
concerned.
we're paying
Yep,
for them to be so powerful to be able to keep
that's
us
it.
from getting justice. Wow.
Yep, that's what it is. And when you look further into, like, I've got about 8 bankers boxes full of documentation just on my case alone. Okay, so I'm talking and I'm born and raised in this country, so I've got a documented medical evidence from the day I was born until today. What is happening in our country is an absolute annihilation of the systems in our country, and it's being done by a lot of people that just happen to be coming here from other countries. And
what do you mean by that?
being a member of the South Asian community, even though I'm born in Canada, so I'm Canadian, I still get classified as a member of the South Asian community. Well, I could speak English and Punjabi, so when I interact with the leaders from our community who have a lot of influence on our government, well, when I'm trying to get them to do something about this and they're not doing something about it, shouldn't we find out why? I think it's even more important, especially in a multicultural country. I think it's even more important for people who are of any ethnic background to keep their own community members accountable. Because if you don't keep your own community members accountable, then you cannot be basically held, you're basically going to get shamed when these people's reputation comes out to the forefront. And what's happening right now in the South Asian community is there's a massive hatred towards the community, but you got to look at how did it get there. I mean, you got Jagmeet Singh. He's a problem. He uses Sikh identity to basically make himself look like he is a good person. That person single-handedly took away Canadians' basic democratic right to have an opposition. And as of today, how come he's still not doing something to get rid of that, whatever that coalition he's created?
With
He's
Trudeau,
made a mockery of our
he's holding
country.
up, and he does nothing but complain about him on Twitter every single day. Jagmeet Singh just wants to rail on Trudeau, but he's holding up this government when he should be letting it fall and do the right thing. And we as citizens are now under a tremendous burden because of the corruption, because of the lack of good governance, and we're in a mess because of it.
And actually I mentioned Jagmeet Singh because he also knows about my case since 2018.
What has he done for you?
This is a absolute, it's not only for me. I could introduce you to some of his constituents. They're suffering and he didn't even meet with them. I could introduce you to another constituent that was on a 6-day hunger strike in front of his office. He didn't even have the decency to find out what happened. And when you look further into it, you're going to find out it brings all that terrorism talk that he always gets dragged into. Before I used to think maybe it's just being allegations. No, where there's smoke, there's fire. And this guy has a lot of explaining to do because some of the information that I've been asking him as well, I believe he was protecting some of these people. And we've got a whole group of members from our community, the South Asian community, who have been using their cultural and language barriers and taking advantage of them. And then let's just say if somebody from the Caucasian community questions their integrity, they'll pull a race card. And that's garbage. This is nothing to do with race, this one, because it's an injury can happen to any race, any nationality. What it comes down to is these people have been using their religious identity to basically defraud victims of human rights abuses. And I especially find it concerning that some of the people that we've identified in workers' compensation fraud, say BC, they're also involved in the Air India bombing investigations. And now we've linked this. We can't just keep looking at these things as common denominators or coincidences. We got to look at these and say, hey, if this group keeps getting caught in these kinds of crime, they need to be held responsible. Question them. And I mean, I copied you guys to that email I sent to Bill Blair, Minister of National Defense. I read on his website. He is also responsible for the health and safety of Canadians home and abroad. I mean, I haven't had to respond. I mean, he hasn't responded to me. But you see, this is the problem. If our elected officials and people in government, they don't even respond to our emails when we're informing them about terrorists and all this other activity, then who do we blame when they find out that this is what's happening, and internationally, I can't say that the United Nations is a perfect, and I think every organ in Canada, or sorry, across the world, has been infiltrated by people that there's good people and there's evil, and there's a lot of evil people who have basically infiltrated key positions. And but the thing is, the United Nations just recently put out a report that the international student program in our country is basically a cake. Is basically what do they call it now? They call it slavery, modern slavery. This report just came out last week, I think it was. Um, 2019, the United Nations Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disability put out a report that Canada has still not fully implemented the recommendations that were agreed upon in, I think, 2010 at the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. And I think you might remember when Prime Minister Trudeau was in the European Union, he was specifically called a human rights violator in the European Union. I think I know why he was called that, because we've been saying this since 2016 when I handed him a USB containing evidence that supported these allegations that WorkSafe BC was subject to human rights abuses on Canadian soil. He had a duty to act. But I think he's been misled by his South Asian MPs and all these people that he trusts. But then it becomes a matter of a breach of trust, because now I've lost all trust in my government because these people misled them to believe that I was a conspiracy theorist, or they like to use your mental health diagnosis that you've got because of your injury against you. And that's why they've been using the police to build this case that I'm belligerent, I'm rude, I'm disrespectful, and I got a recent letter that I'm menacing. How can you call me menacing? I have been talking to these people for 10 years and I've stayed disciplined. But you see, this is where we're learning about, well, 5 years ago, if somebody was to know that I had a psychiatrist, they're going to think, well, this guy's lost it. He's off the wall, whatever. They're going to think you're just the
I
ticking
don't
time
find
bomb.
you menacing. We've had to work through trying to get through some of your documents here, and I don't find anything that makes you not even an impatient person, but rather you're highly frustrated, I would say. If you haven't been able to get help for an injury from 2012, you're dealing with a mountain of frustration and your health, and you're not able to get the healing you need at all.
Nope. And this is where the healing part is. I just learned last week, and I tell you, I fall off the horse and get back on it every day, right? This is just something that it's hardwired into my system that you just never give up. And there's too many people that depend on me to get out there and speak on their behalf because they can't even walk. Some of them can't even leave their place where they're laying, right? So if I'm going to take this responsibility, you got to do it properly. And and of course, there's days I wish I was able to just lay down and do nothing because it'll save me the increased pains at night. But that's not that's not human nature.
I'm so sorry.
I'm it's I brought some of it upon myself because I think that when I refuse their whatever compensation offer, like I told everybody in my family as well, yeah, it sounded very good. But let's just say they did give me a big payout, and I did buy this, and I did buy you that, and I buy this. But then eventually, I got to look at myself in the mirror every day and know that I walked away on 18 people, and they're suffering because of me.
Right. Now let me. I want to really understand what you're saying right now, because I know that you know your case so well. What you're saying is you fought really hard for your particular case, but you realized that there was 18 other people that also are not getting justice because of this exact issue that you're pointing out regarding this clause 90
6.20
0.20,
96.20.
right?
Yes.
So
That's
I mean, it's pretty amazing, Jazz. Like you're either like really
I
crazy
I
or
hate to
you're
think of it
really
like that. I
a good
know.
man.
I hate to, you know what? I think my kids will tell you that I'm just a simple good guy. That's it.
I think you
But
are. I
that
think you are.
discrepancy and
Okay.
that discrepancy, the reason, and that's the reason why that discrepancy, because as soon as they put it back in, then it comes down to, well, then who took it out? And when you look further into my case, one of the executives that were named in that document, Diana Miles, I have reason to believe she might have something to do with this problem I'm facing at Royal Columbian Hospital because she's on the board of directors at the Royal Columbian Hospital's foundation. You know,
Okay,
somebody
tell
who
us
was a
about her. So
CEO.
who is she at the hospital?
Okay, so Diana Miles was the CEO president of WorkSafe BC when I brought that discrepancy to the attention of her office. And instead of doing the proper thing and she dragged her feet and she put it on the vice president of claims who tried to put it off on somebody else. I wasn't having any of it. I started recording I started making audio recordings of my meetings with them
Sure,
because I
everyone should
figured
these
that
days. You
because
have
okay,
to come against the
well,
liars. They say
yes,
something was said, this is what
well,
happened, and
exactly.
it's not true at all.
Yeah, and now this is where in this and this is in 2016. So you remember 2016. You got to go back, and you'd be surprised how far back we were in technology at that point. All right, and 2012, it goes even worse, and people didn't even have iPhones at that time, but I did because I like to think that I was on top of these little gadgets and stuff. I was a tech, like I was into this kind of stuff because I was an active working person and I had an income. Then you put towards the economy, right? But now, when I ran into that discrepancy, I already had assumed the size of this problem because, see, in my aviation background, I use law and policy all the time, and I know that if a policy or a law says that it's here, you're going to find it there, and if it's not there, it'll actually have a note to tell what happened from there, reference to where it went, and you'll be able to get records of what happened, when it happened, because there has to be a day went missing. But anyway, so now that that discrepancy was confirmed by Paul Petrie, he recommended it should be put back in place. But then since then, we've had two more government reports. One was from a retired lawyer, Janet Patterson. Oh, I'll send you an email about that. And that actually even focuses on another major issue in our country. They found that indigenous people, injury claims from indigenous communities were denied twice as often as others, clearly showing that there
Well,
was a discriminatory factor
that's
against
pretty
indigenous.
politically incorrect, isn't it, in Canada? So I guess
Oh,
when it
yes.
serves their purposes, they're all about,
Yep.
the indigenous, but when it doesn't, when it's going to
Yes.
cost them something, right? Then they're
Oh, no,
denying
then.
them. And are the
Oh, but
indigenous
this
aware
is.
of this?
I've been sending emails to the indigenous communities, but you know what? I'll tell you, even the indigenous communities are very, very well aware of basically traders amongst them. They've had people that are basically paid to turn a blind eye to what's really happening. I've even asked some of the missing and murdered indigenous women, the people that work on the front lines, and this case all gets dragged into it because the only question I've been asking them, and it's scary, but how many of the missing and murdered Indigenous women were introduced to opiate prescriptions that for workplace injuries that were wrongfully denied or terminated? They say so many. And now
Right.
the problem with that is, so if I'm on a prescription, right, there's some prescriptions that if they cut you off cold turkey, your response, the body response is going to be so strong that you're going to, and anybody from Canada, especially British Columbia, they know if you want anything, and this has always historically been true, you can find anything you want in downtown Hastings area. But if you ever
Wow.
drive in that area, what I found the most concerning, there are probably about 3 or 4 pharmacies on every block. And about 2, 3 weeks ago, I've been copying that report that we've got a group of doctors, lawyers, and nurses and other medical professionals who are basically defrauding injured workers. And a couple of weeks ago, a pharmacist got caught basically operating a drug den out of his pharmacy in downtown East Side. He was even giving people opiates without a prescription. Now, he is also a member from our South Asian community, but you see, this is where there are people from our community that are doing this, but we need to hold them accountable. But we need the police officers to do this because, like I said, the same people involved with all the other stuff as well.
Okay.
This is a video from.
Yes, tell me about this video because you've recorded and you have videoed many of the interactions, many of the data and the resources to prove your case of what you're trying to tell everyone right now.
Yes. So basically the reason was because when I first brought up that discrepancy, I was called a liar, right? Now, I don't appreciate being called a liar. I've done nothing but except for good things for people, even advice. I've only ever given people good advice. Now, with this, I knew that a picture paints 1,000 words. And if I could get a video recording of our meeting, I don't need to sit there and prove what I said. It's all right there. So now everything that we said to Harry Baines that day, I've been saying this in the last emails. That was more than sufficient information for him to order a public inquiry then. But you see, when I walked out of this meeting abruptly as I did, he basically used that, and this is what the South Asian community people do. They gaslight you to make you look like you're belligerent and you're rude and you're disrespectful. But you know what? When somebody lies to you, I guess it's something I haven't learned as a person. I don't know how to show respect to somebody who lies. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, fairly understandable. It's very hard to negotiate with liars. If I could ask, I don't want to cut you off because I know you're saying things, but you also are referring that, like when you talked to Harry Baines, you requested a public inquiry. I'll put this here. And you also refer to page 8149 of the Hansards from May 17th, 2007. And you're stating to Mr. Baines, you are on the record calling for a public inquiry into WorkSafe BC. But you claimed the Minister of Labour at that time, Shirley Bond, was denying a public inquiry.
Yep. That's all in the paper, black and white. And this was the kind of evidence that we gave Dr. Plekas back then. And after one of our meetings, within 24 hours after one of our meetings, Dr. Plekas ordered his investigations. Now, I'm not saying that that's happened because of us, but I'd like to believe that the investigations, because the investigations that we exposed, it exposed these bureaucrats that were basically taking advantage of their positions of trust and authority and bullying injured workers. But as a constituent,
yes.
As a constituent, minister is responsible for this issue. And like I said, he had an opportunity here to call the public inquiry, but I can speculate why I believe he is not doing a public inquiry, simply because his associates and possibly some of his associates' children are actually the people that have been targeting injured workers from the South Asian community. And I can tell you, there are lots of people in our community that are mad as hell about this. And like I said, when Mr. Kang committed suicide, I spoke to his brother. He still got that pain in his eyes. And you know, every time there's just another gentleman that died last week in a truck accident. What I'm hearing from the reports from the people, apparently they're intentionally using cheap quality tires, which are blowing out under loads, and that's what they're suspecting happened with that guy on that bridge. And
whose fault is it when someone's using not good tires. Whose fault is that?
Well, see, now this is where the problem is going to come. If I buy a brand new tire, right, and it comes from a company that made in, let's say, India, okay, and they made these tires, and trust me, they did, and they did, let's just say they did not have the proper humidity levels, and you have to have a climate controlled area when you're making these tires, because if there's too much humidity, it'll create air pockets, which will be weaker tire. Now, if you just get these tires made and they look like brand new tires and you throw them on and you load that truck up beyond what those tires can handle, it's going to blow out eventually, right? But now if you take a full load on a big truck and take it to, let's just say, across Canada, well, you're going to end up finding one of those turns is going to be the last turn that poor guy makes. But there's a little pattern we found, because there's a bunch of truck drivers that we've identified who have also been defrauded. And theirs becomes a little bit more complicated because as truck drivers, they're supposed to be covered by ICBC. But WorkSafe BC has found a loophole where they delayed the cases of those people that can't speak English until it's outside of the limitation period, and then they become strictly WorkSafe BC's responsibility. And what I mean, just judging by some of the details that I've heard from some of the injured workers, it seems like the lawyers are making like a private deal for their third-party liability and creating a trust fund. But the victims, they're just getting a couple of peanuts just to get by the death of their family member. But it's all about money, right? Even workers' compensation fraud, it's all about money. And there's a money trail, but we need law enforcement to take the money laundering, human trafficking, and fraud more seriously, because we've become the money laundering capital of the world. It's ridiculous.
Okay. And so this policy 96.20, it is gone. No one
still
is
not in place.
It's
Nope,
not in
nobody's
place.
Nope. It's been removed from volume 2, and and that policy applied in every single one of our cases. And now, see, in my case, I've got that report from Officer Ray Benwari, the retired RCMP officer who's went over my file now.
Yes.
He's confirmed this is they committed fraud, negligence, and breach of trust. My MLA should be able to get this issue resolved for me overnight, right? But my MLA, she's a former RCMP officer as well, and I thought she was a good person, but I'm starting to question that because MLA Eleanor Sturko has not responded for over 2 months since receiving that report.
Okay. So I think I'm beginning to understand the importance of this policy 9620.
Yes.
Is it because, why is that policy so important? I'm going to let you explain it, and then I'm going to read what you wrote here. Why is that so important?
Basically, because it affects every member of the public. For any injury claim after, for any injury claim after July 2nd, 2004, we have to rely on volume 2. There's no other volume we can go to. If we show them in volume 1, they're going to say, well, that's okay, Mr. Gill, but this is volume 2 we're talking about. And there's no mention of that policy 9620 is missing.
And that's why you're saying it's important. Who took it out? How did it get deleted?
Yes.
And now, would they be deleting it? Would they be deleting it? As I really want to understand this, because it basically says that a board officer determines the amount and duration of compensation to be paid for temporary disability. Are they taking it out because this says that a board officer determines whether compensation is payable? So if they take this out, it's like saying, no, we're not responsible. Is that right?
Yep. That's what it's done.
Okay.
It's basically taken
I get it.
the whole well, and you know, I always focus on it. Even says use common sense for these people.
Yes.
And see, this is where, and I'm not going to take credit for this as well, but when I met with Pierre Poilievre last July, I don't remember the exact date. Now, maybe if we look further into it, I would not be surprised, because I mentioned this to Pierre Poilievre, that common sense is what we need to focus on this thing. And I'm not saying he took that common sense phrase because of me, but I don't know
But
if
he's
he was
been
using
talking
it
about
before
it
that.
nonstop. He might have got that
Yeah.
from Maxime Bernier, but anyways, yes, we digress.
Oh, that's fine. But when we met with him, when I met him on July 2023 last year, I gave him a USB, and I even told him, because that night he announced his election plans for the election platform. He mentioned the opiate crisis, and I told him we have a solution for the opiate crisis. And within 1 month, even MLA Trevor Helford, when he was the critic of mental health and addictions, we have a Zoom meeting with him. He agreed that our solution for the opiate crisis would show a noticeable improvement on the front line, even in the downtown east side, within 1 month of implementation.
And
But then
and
he
what is that
and then
solution? Do you have a
oh
simple
well,
format for
yeah,
that?
simple solution.
Yep.
Yeah, the attorney general just needs to force WorkSafe BC to start following their mandate. That's it. And their mandate is to give injured workers proper medical treatment and disability pensions until they get better. But if you don't even give the person the medical treatment that they required, how are we supposed to ever get better?
Yeah,
I mean,
and
I still
opiates get
speak
taken because there's a lot of pain, and
to cover
even
up the pain, and
yes.
then they're profiting off that because David Eby made that lawsuit. Well, if David Eby won that lawsuit for I don't know how many 100 million or whatever against the pharmaceutical companies, I didn't receive any of that money, and I'm one of the victims of this opiate crisis because I've been forced to take these medications. I didn't want them in my system. Now I got to live with them. But when these poor people's cases get terminated unexpectedly, their access to those prescriptions also gets cut off, and that's what keeps dragging them in. And now, we're starting to learn about some of the dispensaries have also been doing the drug dealing part. Yep, the government seems to be on the right track. Who's doing it? Today, it's not drug dealers that are killing people, it's these people that have gone into positions of trust and authority. They're taking advantage of their positions and they're committing human rights abuses. And like I said, the word genocide, it's a very, very, very harsh word to be using anywhere. But by definition, it's exactly what WorkSafe BC is doing. I mean, when they systematic,
So sorry about
pardon
that.
me?
I hear your wonderful family in the background, and
Oh yeah, that was,
I
yeah,
do
sorry about
pray
that.
that you get well. And
Yeah.
I pray to the Lord God. My God is Jesus Christ, and I do pray
Yeah. Well,
that you would get some sort of compensation, that you would get relief, and for yourself and others, that
yeah.
something comes here.
Well, we're just hoping that we can find a lawyer or one active law enforcement officer who actually enforces the law. The police officers that have been involved up until now, you're seeing that the officer David Thibault, he's the one of the directors for BC. I've clearly said that there's human trafficking involved in this as well, because when you're dealing with some injured workers, they're not even finding their bodies. International students that are coming here under the school program, they're getting recruited right off the school ground in construction labor jobs. And I could tell you, when they don't get the treatment, they're the ones who end up dying. And people think that, oh, this is just, whatever. But no, this is a big thing. It's basically they're profiting over people with their SIN number. And they ran into my problem because I just refused to bend my ethics for people. And I said, no, look, there's one way of doing things, right or wrong. Let's do the right thing. And I mean, I just didn't expect it to take this long to even get to where we are. But I'm planning on visiting some of these government offices. I visited Harry Bain's office last Thursday. He he's a very, very despicable person. Um, I've got an audio recording. He basically tried to even told his constituency assistant, don't pay attention to this guy. You know, he's born and raised in India. For him to come to Canada, immigrate to Canada, and have a great opportunity in this country, it is shameful that he supports a genocide through this, because I personally think people like that should be stripped of their citizenship and sent back, because the compassion is not there. That Canadian culture, that Canadian compassion that we were known for, it doesn't exist in these people, and we should
Would you
remove those types of people.
would you say that there's any kind of corruption? Is WCB, I mean, is there a way to see how much money they make every year? Like, is that public information?
Oh yeah, there. If you want to get public information on that, have you ever heard of Chris Sakachia? He ran for mayor of Toronto. He was also called a conspiracy theorist for a long time. This guy,
Chris
I'll
Sky?
send you a video. No,
Yeah.
yeah, Chris Guy. Chris Guy is his other name.
Okay.
He made a video about a year and a half ago. I'll send you that video.
Yeah.
He makes the exact same allegation that we made in that video, where I said that they're taking those billions of dollars a year as a surplus and they're investing it through BC Investment Management Corporation. He's got documentation that confirms the Ontario Workers' Compensation Board pensions are also being sent to BC Investment Management Corporation as a surplus. Now, for him to say that in Ontario, and we said this in 2017, but now, like I said, when my friend sent me that video, I didn't even know who this guy was. But then he told me he's a conspiracy theorist. And when somebody tells me they're a conspiracy theorist, I usually try to listen to them a little bit more, because let's see what they have to say.
Yeah, because they're usually prophetic within 6 months. Yeah, I get it.
Well, but for
so
him to
have said that. So do you think, so there is a possibility here that rather than, you're an organization there to make claims for people who are injured, but rather than pay out those claims, somebody's probably getting a huge fat paycheck, a lot of fat paychecks,
time.
right? And then they're going,
Over
you know,
150.
instead of taking care of Jazz, you know, we'll just kind of invest his money and the 18 other people that you know and all these others.
Oh boy.
Right? So this is kind of this is the big scam and the elephant in the room.
You know what the elephant in the room really is, and people don't want to talk about this. It's that World Economic Forum and all those people involved.
Oh yeah, we talk about it.
All this money is being sent through BCI into companies called Quadrille, and I can't remember other ones. But then this one guy, he's a guy from Alberta. He's exposing a lot of the financial stuff.
Yes.
He actually mentions that the money was being sent through, you know, our pension money is being sent through all these housing programs, and that's how they're cashing it. And, it's happened here, and it's all happening right now in all over here, BC, Calgary, Edmonton, all the main cities. It's all over the place. But it's a matter of, we've said this to David Eby, and we've said this to the Cullen Commission. We believe workers' compensation fraud is a major source of money that is being laundered.
Okay.
And then, because you have to go back to a little bit more of history in BC. In 1999, they got rid of the Vancouver Stock Exchange. Mm-hmm. A lot of people didn't know that the Vancouver Stock Exchange even existed, but they got rid of it because there was a group of money launderers that were laundering money through there. And then when you look back at our history, our government has a history of lying and pump and dump stock and stuff. So it's like the same thing. It's like they found a way to basically funnel that money and take it away from injured workers, who people will just say, oh, he's just a disgruntled injured worker that's sitting on vacation collecting pension. They don't tell the truth.
How much do you think some of these executive leadership team, Ann Nasser, President, CEO, Charmaine Chen, Mark Haywood, like what are their salaries, do you think?
I have no idea. I usually, like this Ian Shaw, Todd McDonald, I've met with these two personally. David Young, I've met with them both personally. This guy claims in rehabilitation, David Young, he is I've got an audio recording with him, and he spent about 5 minutes behind me on a computer trying to find Policy 9620, and you could hear his responses. I've got CBC journalist Natalie Clancy. I think it was her because she, the way her responses were, I'm navigating her on her computer on the phone, and she actually confirms this policy is missing. And after that, she ghosted me. CBC should be reporting this right away. It
Well,
affects
you're not going to
every.
get the truth or any kind of justice from
Well,
CBC. They get their
well, I
talking
was,
points from someone else, and it ain't about us. They don't care about
yeah.
us, that's for sure.
But that's why I'm
I hear
hoping
you.
that one of these journalists that I'm copying, Bell Puri and these other people there. See, I'm going after these people because I always believe that they have one simple responsibility, and their job and their duty as a journalist is to relay any information that affects the public. And by suppressing the truth, they have prolonged our pain and suffering. I mean, if we were able to find a competent lawyer in this country right now, well, no, we have to be limited to BC. I cannot find a single lawyer to represent my case because, well, I mean, Wally Opal is involved.
Yes.
Wally Opal, he's a former judge. He also chaired the Air India public inquiry into the Air India bombing. He met with us in 2016, and we've been giving him evidence since there that supported our claim, and he did nothing to help us. When you have lawyers that are involved in this problem, you're never going to get justice for injured workers. And then the only places that offer legal aid that's funded by the government, those organizations are getting the money from the government, but they're not carrying out the duty that they're supposed to give out, the service they're supposed to provide the public. It's like you can't hold these people accountable for anything, and that's where we're stuck. And that's why I'm hoping that these police officers that I'm copying to, they understand how they should be at least charged for public mischief for acting like this.
Right. Well, I'm just going through, yes. And I mean, this whole thing with you've mentioned several times this Air, the Air India. I mean, it's just never been resolved how many years, and somehow people are walking away who they know had something to do with it. So Ann Nasser looks like her salary is $405,000.
Wow.
With benefits
look where she came from. You have to look where she came from before that. She came from BC Investment Management Corporation. She was an accountant there. And then when you look at some of the documentation that I have, one of the Deputy Attorney General of BC, Richard Fife, who swore in an affidavit in my case against Harry Baines, his brother happens to be the CEO of BC Investment Management Corporation.
Fascinating.
And like I said, oh, I know. And then when you look further into all the Picton investigation and stuff, that happened in 2002, the same year they got rid of the Human Rights Commission. Same year they also turned WCB into WorkSafe BC. How many of those missing and murdered Indigenous women were introduced to opiates for injuries? So many.
So you're saying the women, so you have the evidence that shows that these women had workplace injuries, they weren't cared for.
So I'll tell you what happened in that is that I've been asking these people that question. And then when I went in 2019 or 18, one of the two, I think it was 2019, I have a recording of that hearing. I made a video recording of the Jaskarn Singh Gill. He's a board of director at WorkSafe BC. He's chairman of the board there now. He's also involved with the Air India bombing and the Picton investigations. He's a retired RCMP officer, first police officer in Canada to wear the turban and serve at the RCMP, which is a huge feat for a religious group for them to win that, which is a great thing. And I thought that was progress. But when we met him, you know what? He knew about all these common denominators with the same people involved, and I don't know why he never took action on that group. But I mean, like I said, we can't always have these people act like they're good and because they're religious that they must be good. My question for him is that
what religion are they? What do you mean religious? Do you mean like
he is Sikh, and he identifies as Sikh, And with Sikhs, turban is a very, very noticeable. It's an identity that is known under Sikhism.
Yeah.
The turban is part of the identity. And now, as a Sikh, he contested having the right to wear the turban and serve in the RCMP, which was obviously that's a religious article, and it should have been protected under the charter, which it usually is, just like anything else. But then the safety and all that stuff is a whole different game, right? But he did that, and when he won that, I think around 1989, that was showing our country was becoming more inclusive, or whatever we want to call it, right? Progressing forward. Now, since he became the board of director, and at some point he was simultaneously a board of director at WorkSafe BC and an active RCMP officer, when we specifically asked him, can you introduce us to an officer who specializes in fraud? And he did nothing. He did nothing to help us. He told us he was in too high of a position to help us, and he didn't specialize in fraud, which I felt was quite disrespectful. I mean, you meet with us for 2 years, we introduce you to 10, 15 other injured workers from different nationalities, and for him to walk out like that, it was disrespectful. But it was totally wrong. But now, we gave audio video recordings of our meetings with him. He didn't know we were making these recordings, and we were giving them to Dr. Plekas as we were meeting him. So he kind of got caught red-handed doing this, because he thought it'll be my word against theirs. And I can tell you that if we didn't have video recordings of those meetings, if he had went public and said, oh, I looked at Mr. Gill's case and everything's fine, I know 100% of the South Asian community would have turned their back on me and called me a liar, blah, blah, blah. But everybody else would have probably said, okay, they're fine. It's just this guy. But you know what? Like I said, that recordings, technology, this many people, we caught him like that.
Wow.
And
So
now
what? So you were able then to show these recordings and to show he was
Yes.
being untruthful.
Yeah.
And then what happened?
Absolutely. Well, and then after that, then Dr. Plekas actually even asked us, do you trust this guy? And I said to him straight up, I said, listen, I'm only grateful that he's even come to meet with us. Whether he helps us or not, I know he should be able to set up a meeting with the CEO immediately, who should be able to resolve our matters in a matter of a signature. But you see, the question everybody keeps asking me is, how come Harry Baines appointed him as a board of director after that meeting we had with him November 17, 2017? Harry Baines was the Minister of Labor, and I asked him in that video, who appoints the board of directors? He said he did. So after that, he could have, we gave a recommendation. Listen, I go, well, I recommend remove the entire board, replace them, and that'll be a culture change, which will bring the changes you need. He didn't do that. He placed Baltaj Singh Gill as a board of director. I thought to myself, why as well? And like I said, I never had any interactions with him prior to this. But in January 2018, we started meeting with him, and that recordings that we made, and the one thing that he clearly says in one of those recordings, that policy 9620 thing, that is something I could sink my teeth into, because that's black and white. It clearly says you will find it in volume 2. Volume 2, you go, you look, it's not there. That's black and white, wrong. So now, he could have helped us, but somewhere along the way, I think he realized some of his own uncles and friends and relatives, their kids from our South Asian community who are super religious, they're also caught up in this fraud. And you know what? Like, it also drags in other people. And when I started kind of thinking that, oh, well, it's kind of a coincidence that that person also involved there and there and there, I kind of started assuming around 2016 that it's the same group. And I guess I just didn't share that with public, because you can't just say that unless you know. I only started knowing because, hey, listen, you know what? If RCMP was to ask these people, what is it a coincidence that they kept that information, relevant information from RCMP? I've always called that obstruction of justice. And I think my interpretation of that is bang on. And
I think it is as well.
People,
I think this smells like so bad. It's just All of it
Oh,
stinks.
absolute
And
corruption.
I'm so disgusted.
Yep.
I'm disgusted at our whole political, environment,
What's happening now? Yeah.
everything that's happening. But then it's like the corruption just flows downward, doesn't it?
Oh, it does.
And
It
when you
does.
see, if you put up this, if people are getting so much money, for God's
Yep.
sakes, can you not
Yep.
help the people that can no longer work and who are hurting? Because that's what
Yep.
your whole organization is set up to do, is to compensate. It's not to,
That's what.
detain the funds
Yes. Yep.
and to
That's
lie
exactly
and to
what it
not
is.
have this policy 96.20 investigated and asked why this is not in there and why it's not being adhered to.
Yep. And basically, so now what has happened is, by acting contrary to what is expected under the Workers' Compensation Act, the Criminal Code of Canada, and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, we've been rendered persons with disability. We've been subjected to undue financial strain, which undermines the whole purpose of the workers' compensation system. But once again, it goes back down to being in the situation I was put in. I could tell you that if I did not have the support of my family, I would not have survived as I did. I would have definitely turned to criminal activity or something. And
Yeah.
that would have been really too bad, because I like to believe I'm actually a good person to people. And
Yes.
to have somebody basically become a criminal because they're robbed
They
by
have no
their
choice
government.
because they're like in such,
Yeah.
is in such bad way because something happened at work.
Yep.
But you had insurance for that. You're supposed to have insurance in Canada, in British Columbia
Oh,
specifically, but in Ontario as well. In Canada, we have this
yep.
great setup where if something happens to you, you have an assurance. And this is being violated and not
Yep.
being done. Before I let you go, Jazz, because this is amazing and it's a lot of information
Yep.
to have taken in, but I really see your plight a lot
Of
better,
course.
and I appreciate you taking the time to go over it with us, because I feel
Yep.
sorry for you, Jazz. I feel sorry for your wife. I
Oh,
feel
well,
sorry for your
I got
children,
my.
what they've had to go through. So what
Oh,
would
I
change
know. I
this?
try not to put myself.
I
You know
I
what?
know you do,
Like I.
but in a perfect world, Jazz, what could happen that would
Yeah.
help you to be this situation to be rectified for you and the other folks? What do you need to happen?
You know what? I just want them to some of these people just take care of their responsibilities. Minister can actually take care of this problem in a signature. I got a recording with my conversation with the former Minister of Citizen Services, Jenny Sims. She's also dragged into this because she could have helped, but then her staff called them us falsely alleging that we were harassing them. So it's like, you know what? They're all in a lot of trouble, and I'm just basically trying to figure out which one of them I can actually, put up with, because the amount of damage they did to me is less than what the other one did. And I'm hoping one of that's her to set up a meeting with the Attorney General of BC, Nikki Sharma, and either one of them can solve these problems overnight. But you see, the reason they're doing this is they're persecuting me because I refuse to stay silent on that discrepancy. And there's a lot of people in our government, very famous people in our government, that are actually all in trouble for this fraud. And it's, at the end of the day, they they they've ruined a lot of aspects of my life. I don't even know what my future holds, because I have to put up with dealing with the surgery still. Like, I can't get away from any of this stuff unless I go under the knife one more time. And you know what? I'm scared of even going under the knife, especially with this many people, out there looking for me in the medical system, like with Diana
Yeah.
Miles being at the Royal Columbian Hospital. I'm afraid to go to sleep, and then these people shut down my respirator or something for
What
5
you're
minutes.
admitting
We need
is
an
what a lot
overhaul.
of people feel. You're not really safe if you're telling the truth these days.
Yeah.
People,
Well, this is it.
I
Yep,
hear
this is
you.
it. But at the end of the day, we got to do it. I mean, I
Yeah.
could introduce you. There's actually somebody I would like for you to meet, is Greg Toombs. I think he spoke to you on Facebook or something a couple of times. When you hear his story, it's going to shock you. They performed a surgery on him that is banned in Canada. Greg wasn't supposed to be alive either, but like I said, Greg's another. He's I think he's Irish. He's a good man. That
A
guy.
miracle
When you
story.
hear his story, oh, he's if you talk to him today, it's amazing how far he's come as a human rights advocate. And but he's heavily into a lot of these other stuff, like even like the weather stuff.
Yep.
Weather equipment totally affects him because the amount of nerve damage he has, he could feel the weather coming a couple of days early. And
Right.
this weather
Wow.
manipulation system that they're doing here,
He can tell
it's
by
not
his
good for
body
our
what's
future.
happening. Well, we know that there's
Yep,
weather
I could tell.
manipulation because Canada has laws. Canada has a law
Yep,
that you're not allowed to have any, do any climate things within, I don't know if it's 100 miles or something of the border. So why would you have that if you're
yep.
not doing climate nonsense?
Oh, there's
You're
if
messing
I
with
was,
it. So,
yeah, there's a lot of people that talk about helping, but you know what? They're just not doing it. They're I don't know how to hold these people accountable, and I can't even get a lawyer. Like it's becoming ridiculous now. And I sometimes even I run out of options. Like I've sent emails to everybody, and nobody seems to be able to help.
right. I can feel the frustration, and it's no wonder that you might get a little testy with some people. I'm testy at
Well,
them just hearing this for 1 hour. And
yeah,
so it's really something. Jazz, I just thank you for sharing this. I hope there
thank
will
you.
be justice for you. I hope that you will be helped and the people that should be helped are helped. And I hope that some of these people
Yeah.
with extremely high salaries that are supposed to be there
Yes.
not to just pack away your funds for your retirement, but because it's
Yeah.
compensation for those who've been harmed, that you would take care of those who've
Yeah.
been harmed and you would do your job.
Yeah.
And then we don't mind
Yeah.
paying
And
you a lot. But right now
yeah.
it seems
And
like and listen, one of the reasons I'm taking this on, Jazz, not just your story, I hear lots of stories. I hear a lot of people
yes.
who are not happy about
And
workers' comp.
in in any of those cases, if there's even a slight possibility of them having permanent disability, that policy would apply to them. And that's another person that's also should be on that same list. And we've got over 100 for sure. But like I
Yes.
said, it's majority of them don't speak English, right? So when they don't speak English, it's like I could bring 100 people here and show you all them, but they're from the South Asian community and they can't speak English, and they're not bad people. They're really,
Do
really
you think
great
that
people. Just unfortunate.
did you think that they're helping white people more? I mean, it's a tough question, but
I think
I
that
mean, would a white
they
guy be
don't
getting
discriminate.
just as messed over? Because I think they are
Yep,
getting messed over.
yep,
Because I think
it is. It is.
ultimately
Oh
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
necessarily about race. It's more about
Yeah. Oh
money
no,
and
no, no.
power. Yeah.
No, no, exactly. But no, I'm just talking about a section that I found that can't speak English. And we have that problem in Canada. That doesn't make it a racism problem because, yes, I've got James, one of the people in that video, Greg, the one that was in the video, he made that recording. When you
Yep.
hear their stories, I haven't been able to get a hold of James' family now for a couple of months, and I
Sure.
believe they lost their
Just
house.
so.
And you know what? I'm just, it breaks my heart to hear families losing their houses and everything. Yeah, in this video, everything that was told to this guy, he could have done something then.
Yeah.
And even last week, I dropped off that report from Officer Benwari. His attitude, garbage. That
Right.
is not
Like
what
they
we
don't
should
care anymore.
expect.
They don't care. It's
Oh, he
just.
doesn't care at all. Oh, no, he doesn't care at all. But like I said, I mean, he's the Minister of Labor.
Mm,
It
mm,
doesn't matter if he cares or not. It's his responsibility.
yes.
If he doesn't like me, that should be beside the point as well. He has a responsibility, and under his responsibility, I can actually honestly say that this guy should be ashamed of himself because, as the Minister of Labor today for British Columbia, there's a report, and I think anybody you ask, I think our labor movement is at the ultimate lowest point in Canadian history. The quality of work, labor standards, everything is at the zero right now. And
Everything
luckily
has
not
been
as a,
lowered in our society lately, like even
yeah,
what a Tim Hortons
yeah,
looks
to the
like.
last,
Everything, something
yeah,
very bad has
well,
happened. It's a very bad
yeah,
psychosis to a lot of minds in our world, and
yeah,
that's just a reality. Jazz, I
yep.
just thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for speaking
Yeah,
with me, and
thank you
I
very
do
much.
pray that you will get justice. And would you just keep me appraised of any new developments?
Ab- Absolutely. I'll continue to blind copy you and I'll keep you updated on
Okay.
any major change. But I really appreciate your time and keep up the good work. I know you're also a very religious and very you're a truth seeker. And you know what?
Yes, sir.
I've watched I'm not very versed in all religions, but I did watch Passion of the Christ was the first time I kind of was able to try to understand it. And I know that's one person's opinion. I always
No, that
thought
that
that it
Passion of the
was
Christ, that sets it up. That's what it's about. It's about
okay.
Jesus.
Well, I can
Yep.
tell you, and Jesus was just like our gurus and everybody else, always looking out for the interests of everybody. And you know what? I think that's what I'm not a religious guy, but I can tell you spiritually, I can see that there's either you love or you're evil. And you know what? The love in that man, the sacrifices that Jesus made, and I was quite offended by what happened at the Olympics with the opening ceremonies.
Oh,
That's a whole different angle because then
I
we have to
know.
talk about the whole different group of people that it's just sheer garbage people that need to be corrected. And
Yes.
you know what? I think it's a time that some of us need to be able to speak to these people and discipline them a little bit.
Well,
Words are
I'm
fine,
I'm gonna
right?
say something, and I just want to put this out in the realm of the spirit for the God who hears us, that you
Yes.
deserve justice, and I am praying that just as the
Thank
woman
you.
who went to the unjust judge in the Word, and she pleaded and pleaded and pleaded, and finally Jesus told this story himself. This Jesus who died for the sins of the world, he told this story. He said the judge didn't want to hear her, and he didn't care. But because she would not stop speaking and bothering him, he
Yeah.
gave her justice. And you know what? You're just the kind of guy, Jazz, that you will not shut up. And my guess is
I
you're
believe
not going anywhere. You're going to be a thorn in everyone's side about this because it's not only for you, it's for the people that you care about. And I'm going to ask
it's for people.
the
It's
good Lord, that in honor of you, and in honor of your plight and your fight, just because he loves you and thinks you're terrific, that God will move on your behalf and the behalf of these others that you are fighting for. I'm going to pray for a miracle, and I'm asking my audience who believe in miracles, because miracles do still continue to happen. Sometimes we just got to ask for them. But
yeah.
I'm praying for a miracle in your situation. And I've enjoyed this
No,
chance to hear what's going on, Jazz, and I appreciate that you're a truth teller in many ways,
thank
and you denying yourself in order to help others. You're really something else, and I honor you. I honor your wife and your
yeah, thank
family, and I
you.
hope that
Thank
they
you.
hear me when I say
Like,
you're a good man, and I honor
thank
that
you so
part of
much.
you. God made you that way, Jazz. Thank you for sharing with me today.
Thank you much. Why, thank you for
God bless
everything.
you.
Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
You too.
God bless you as well.
Thank you. All right, that was neat, wasn't it? Very different, very different. I'm going to say that maybe, people across North America and the UK and everywhere didn't tune in, unless, of course, you're all finding the same thing, that there's corruption in these organizations that are supposed to be there to help people that are not really helping people. I don't like it. And we started out, every day I ask God, would you help my dad's Bible to just kind of open to the right page? And it opened to that scripture that I read in the beginning, to step up and to speak for those that are not being heard, for those that whose voices are not being listened to. And Jazz is one of those voices. And so I like him. I like him a lot. Don't you? I love a lot of our just beautiful people in the Sikh community. And I cherish them. I was on a plane recently coming back, and pretty much the entire plane was from India. And I was like one of 4 white people. And I sat beside a young man, and he's a truck driver in Alberta. And we had the most fascinating talk. I talked to, he talked about his family of origin in India and how they grow up and they all live together, you know, as aunties and uncles. We were talking about the difference in Canada, how our kids grow up and find their own house and then no one can afford anything. So, you know, they do things differently, but I just appreciated so much being able to just have a discussion. And, you know, his eyes, like, he had beautiful, beautiful eyes. He had a beautiful sensitivity, not just, you know, not physically so much as I saw into his soul, what a beautiful person he was. And God's watching. God is watching. And that corruption, if you are a part of corruption, of hurting people, God is watching you, and you will not only answer to man, you will answer to God one day. So all of those who have anything to do with this thing today, what was mentioned, what we understood, what we didn't understand, what is so complex, I think I'm understanding better though. And I do think it goes back to money and power and hiding and protecting those who may not be doing right, protecting corruption. If you're any part of that, God help you. My website is Laura-Lynn.tv. I appreciate you joining us. Thank you. If you are able to help us in any way to do what we do, telling the truth every day, I would greatly appreciate it. It's not easy. Sometimes you get the feeling that you're putting yourself sort of, you know, into a bullseye because you're speaking things which everybody wants to keep hidden. Why isn't CBC doing all of this? I have no idea. So if you're able to help us, there's a donate button right there, and you can donate anonymously. You can donate a small amount, large amount, become part of helping us every single day. We believe that God cares about human beings. We believe that God cares about those who are mistreated. In fact, his heart is very much for them. And I love that Jazz was able to share his heart. We could understand that there's an injustice going on here, and we can hopefully bring some justice. If you want to send an e-transfer, that's llttlive@pm.me. And if you are able to send snail mail, just go to P.O. Box 1065, Vetter Crossing, Chilliwack, BC, at the postal code right there on your screen. All right. So let me just say today, James 1, verse 26. Let me close with this today. Those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. Religion that God our Father accepts as pure and faultless is this: to look after orphans and widows in their distress, and to keep oneself from being polluted by the world. You know who feels like an orphan right now is probably Jazz. You know who feels like an orphan are those who are being mistreated by leaders in our country and by top brass, not paying attention to the needs, to the hurt, the pain. This is a man in a lot of pain right here. Something went very badly. And you know, I know he's Sikh and he's not Christian, but I'll tell you something I know about my God. My God loves Jazz. He loves him. He sees him. My God knows the intricacy, the truth, and the injustice behind all of this. And somehow this has come across my desk and my path, and I will tell you that I just felt very immediately that the Lord God wanted me to turn my eye and put my eye on this issue today. And I bet a lot of you know about your own stories and things that you know are going on. But I hope more than anything that those at these places that need to be paying attention, that they will see this, because those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongues and speak the truth and keep a tight rein on your actions, your agendas, Keep a tight rein, I would say, on what is righteous, and to pull in deception and to expose it. If you see deception in your world as an awesome person, let alone a Christian, you're supposed to be exposing the evil works of darkness. You're not supposed to be going along with it. You're not supposed to be promoting it. You're supposed to expose it, because there is an enemy who roams about like a lion, seeking whom he may devour and deceive. And I, for one, refuse to be deceived. And there's a point in our nation where everybody is going to get awakened. It's happening more and more that shows like mine expose the evil. And it only takes pretty much one person, one judge somewhere. And you think judges and lawyers don't watch my show? You're very wrong if you don't think they do. Very significant people watch this program. Thousands and thousands and thousands per day pay attention to what is being put here. And what is being said here is that we have to return our country to righteousness. We have to expose corruption so that we can have a nation that is not full of deception, immorality, violence, and absolute greed. May God help us all. May God help us all. Have a great day. You know, it's not easy to deliver the truth of what our sick world is doing, but for some of us, we feel that we have no choice. Because if we are silent about these abominable things, then we are letting evil go unchecked, and we cannot do that. For those of you wonderful people who are writing me and are sharing your encouragement, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for all the letters that you've been sending. Thank you for the donations and the support. I found out that in order to speak the truth, you have to become very, very strong. If you would go to my website at www.lauralynn.tv, you'll find all of the ways that you can contact me. Remember, my friends, all is well. All is well. Thanks for joining me.